Hail. Good evening, folks, and welcome along to the Endless Celts Podcast. This is the Monday night show. Anthony, going to be in the host chair tonight, and tonight we're going to be looking back at our yet another impressive win against the Dons at home this weekend. We'll also be paying tribute to our man of the match. It seems to be a regular occurrence at the moment, Reo Hatate. We'll be comparing Ange and Brendan, which side would come out on top. We'll maybe touch on that, and finishing off with looking at the future of the League Cup, both north and south of the border. And to go through all that and more, delighted to be joined by two show regulars. First of all, Ross, how you doing, mate?
I'm not bad, mate. Back on the Monday night. It was regular Friday, now it seems to be regular Monday. But aye, good to be back and talking about another big Celtic win.
Absolutely, you're just like Jota or Maeda on the wides. It doesn't matter which side you need to be asked on, you just deliver every time. And of course, the man
Larry will get you everywhere.
Absolutely. And also another show regular, Franny, is in the house as well. How you doing, mate?
Aye, all good, all good. Just was rushing a wee bit as we're discussing off air, and that work was a bit of a nightmare. But we're here.
We're here, and you've got a new retro top to add to your collection as well.
No, Anthony, no.
Therapy after your dodgy day out.
I nearly bought one, but I didn't. I didn't think how I was going to justify it till I'm coming home from work on a Monday evening with a Celtic tap.
Cup final week, you need to get kitted out, son. It's all the justification you'll need, and of course Franny's going to be in charge of all the comments tonight as well. So welcome along, everybody. We're delighted to have you here on the show. Get involved in the discussion, and Franny will do his best he can to bring up all the comments on screen as well. So evening to everybody. But Franny, there's only one place to start really, and that's of course Saturday. There was a point in the game where I actually thought that we were going to be chatting about our favourite scoreline, a hassle-free 2-0, as the second half was wearing on, but two late goals just made it that little bit more convincing. But as games against Aberdeen go, that was as hassle-free as you could hope to have.
It's arguably, it's up there with one of our best performances this season. I don't think there's many better, especially that first half. It was how it stayed 2-0. It was unbelievable, to be fair. And I think just we are known for starting quick and getting an early goal. And I think the goal after a minute, it just absolutely, not saying there was any nerve, but it just, Aberdeen obviously put it up at Pittodrie recently put up a stern test, and it turned us to kind of the last minute to get off the mark. So it's always good to get that early goal, settles maybe anything that is maybe lingering in the crowd, any sort of nerves that might have been there. And I think it was 12-13 minutes when we got the second goal. So at that point it was, could it be any score? And like I say, just first half obviously never petered out. It was just we never got that second goal, and then that third goal. Sorry, then into the second half, it was I was looking like the most hassle-free 2-0 you'll ever see, and then just the depth of the squad showed, and guys just put it on again. Hatate just was ridiculous.
It really was. Of course, we're going to touch on Reo in a bit more detail very soon, Ross, but your own thoughts on the performance, mate. You were certainly waxing lyrical enough about it in the group chat, and it's just another 3 points from a relentless Celtic side.
Absolutely. I agree with Franny there. I felt certainly the first half an hour, I would say that's as good as we've been all season. There you go. Aberdeen just couldn't. Aberdeen just couldn't live with us. I thought certainly the first half hour, like I was saying, I thought Maeda and Jota on either side, and at one point they swapped. I thought they were absolutely phenomenal, the both of them. They were just a thorn in Aberdeen's side, and then obviously Reo Hatate, who was man of the match, he came more into the game. And was just picking up wee pockets of space in the edge of the box. That's where he got his first goal. And even he sort of got his second goal in similar vein. I'm sure we'll touch on the goals, but I thought the whole team performance was absolutely outstanding from start to finish. And I mean, testament to it was, I think it was Andrew Shinnie had came out and said after the game that he's played against the Rodgers team and stuff like that, and he said that's the best Celtic team he's faced. And I mean, people have their own thoughts. I don't think I find it hard to argue with that. I think right now Celtic are playing absolutely outstanding football, and they're going to be very, very hard to stop. I know we've got a cup final, and it'll be a very difficult game, but if we turn up and play like we did in that first half on Saturday, I don't see us having many problems on Sunday. I thought we were outstanding in that first half. And in the second half, by the way, it was 2-0 at half time. I thought the second half we sort of took the foot off the gas a wee bit. We weren't going through the motions by any stretch, but we took the foot off the gas, sort of conserving energy, with one eye, maybe not one eye on the final, but looking ahead to that, if you like. But again, it's the squad. So we're sort of took the foot off the gas, but then Haksabanovic comes on, Abada comes on, and again that they just elevate the team. These guys are wanting to make an impression, and then that's when we get our two later goals, and it's just testament to the squad as a whole right now. When we do, I say tail off, I'm trying to think of a better term, but because we didn't tail off, but again, you get but then you get that lift with guys trying to prove themselves. And I thought Haksabanovic came on; he was absolutely excellent again. We talked about on the podcast, I think it was a couple of weeks ago. he's bang on. We talked about on the podcast a couple of weeks ago about Haksabanovic coming on and like what's his sort of role going to be in the squad going forward. It's very difficult for him to get into the team, but he's coming into the team, and the bit of play for him to set up Abada's goal, I thought was absolutely outstanding. The skill, the pass in, but before that, the work rate and the strength to win the ball back high up the park was brilliant. I just absolutely love this Celtic team right now.
Yeah. Likewise, you'll not be surprised to know. And Franny, just in touch, we'll go through perhaps a bit more of the game in a little bit, but just the fact that Ross has brought it up in his intro there about, you know, what Shinnie said about the two sides, you know, like as Ross says, he was a mainstay in that Aberdeen side when Brendan Rodgers' Celtic was, you know, taking all before them. You know, they still obviously hold the only side to have won an invincible treble. They obviously hold all the records as well, 106 goals, 106 points in that campaign. Those numbers are possibly, obviously we won't go the season unbeaten, but the points total is definitely still up for grabs. We spoke about it in the group chat earlier today about, you know, the two sides, and of course we've been spoiled in the last few years, the fact that we've been able to witness them both. And I've sort of made the comparison that it's slightly, you know, obviously maybe not quite to that level, but I've kind of felt Brendan's teams were a bit more calculating, tried to make the opposition make more mistakes, if that makes sense. A bit more kind of clinical in the terms that kind of Pep Guardiola's Manchester City side is. Whereas I find that, and Ross was bang on as well, it's not that this current Celtic side lack any kind of tactical knowledge. It's just, it's more pleasing on the eye in terms of the pace of it, and the fact that, you know, we kind of use the term, it's like Jurgen Klopp's kind of high press, kind of heavy metal sort of football. Like you say, it's very hard to sort of break between the two at the moment, but we did sort of make the point that were we to win, and you know, you don't want to use the T word at the moment because especially the cup final right on the horizon, but were we to do such a thing with the fact that Rangers are definitely a better side than the version of them that was around in 2016-17, it definitely would put that marker in Angie's column.
It certainly would give you the argument to put forward that Angie's team being better than Rodgers, or certainly it comes more a discussion point then who's better and stuff, because obviously the calibre Rangers is better now. I would argue maybe Hearts is probably better now as well compared to what maybe Rodgers was up against. So Ange is coming up against maybe better teams domestically. Rodgers, I think, obviously had better calibre, not in every position, but some of these players like your Dembele's, your Sinclairs and that are, then obviously inherited Tierney and that are really top calibre players. I think even though the opposition wasn't as great, I think still to go a full domestic season undefeated is some achievement, regardless of the opposition you're against, because we're obviously running away with the league. It would be easy to kind of have an off day in the league and accept it and just bat it off and just you maybe get that wee stupid defeat at like a St Mirren or a Ross County away from home and that. And so I think now for me, Brendan Rodgers' team is probably better than, like, obviously not to watch on there. I totally agree with you. I would pay money, if it was who I'm paying money against, I'm paying money to watch an Ange team every day of the week. Rodgers, a bit like tactically, Rodgers he's up there, but sometimes it felt like he was passing for passing's sake, just to have more passes, more possession. Whereas we get a lot of possession under Ange, but it's because we're winning the ball high up. We just dominate teams. It's not we're keeping the ball for the sake of keeping the ball in. It's I don't know how to describe like guys like Shanahan that's comments. I wouldn't say it is nice, but it's embarrassing. I almost smug a wee bit about it because obviously we know, like, we sit week in, week out waxing lyrical about them, but I think it's maybe just like a wee smugness. You're going, look at everybody's noticing this. Nobody's saying it about the other team across the city, and so there's a wee bit of smugness in it. And apart from David Martindale, one minute he's Celtic are the best team in Scottish football, then the next thing it's Michael Beale's done a brilliant job, and I suppose on paper all his results you can't argue with him. So, but David Martindale, I think, because he's checkered past, I think he's got to be careful what he says in the media so folk didn't start digging for him. But it's just, I feel a wee bit smug when you get like pros, current professionals coming out and saying how impressed they are with Celtic. And it is testament to Ange and the current crop when you consider what guys like Brendan Rodgers done.
Absolutely. It's the fact that there's even the debate to be had just shows how well Ange has done, Ross. Do you know, I was just sort of thinking there, maybe, again, one of the things that would maybe tip the manner of the debate in Ange's favour, I would say as well, is the fact that there's no denying what Brendan, the whole club was transformed when Brendan came in terms of, he sort of elevated players. He made players that were already at the club better. Your Stuart Armstrongs, your James Forrest, Scott, we got the best out of Scott Brown, etc., etc. But I think a lot of the foundations had already been put in place by Ronnie Dyler, the kind of athlete, 24-hour athlete first culture and all that. A lot of the players when it was Ronnie didn't really buy into it. But the players that did came on leaps and bounds under Brendan. He's got to take great credit for that. But I would say that in terms of the level of the actual rebuild of the club, I think Ange had perhaps a tougher job on his hands than what Brendan had in that respect. Obviously, he was back, reasonably well. He brought in the likes of Dembele, he added, quality to the team, Dembele, Sinclair, etc. But I think there was more of a spine of the team there when Brendan came in, as compared to what Ange inherited with the mess when he came in the summer of 21.
Oh, it certainly was, aye. Ange has had probably the biggest rebuild that I can remember. I can't think a manager coming in and has been in more disarray. But in terms of, it's difficult to say who's better. I prefer watching Ange's team. I think most would agree with that. I think right now Celtic have scored more goals than, I think it's something like they've scored more goals at this stage than they have in each of the last something like 16 seasons or something at the end of the season. So
at the end of the season.
Aye, they've scored more. Celtic have scored more goals at this stage of this season than any team has scored in a full season. Wow. And each of the last something like 13 or 16 seasons, something like that. But I think if Celtic keep going the way they're going, they can obviously surpass the points tally that the Rodgers team accumulated in the Invincible season. Now, if just for talking sake, if Celtic were to go the rest of the season and surpass that Rodgers one, although they've not went unbeaten, they've accumulated more points and they've obviously had less draws, you would have to say. You could make an argument that that's a better league campaign than going invincible. I know, like Franny said, it doesn't matter who you're playing. Going invincible is an unbelievable achievement at any level of football. But I don't know, if Celtic go and do the T word that we don't want to say this season, then for me, I think if they were to go and do that against the level of Rangers team that Ange's facing compared to the one Rodgers is facing, I think if they were to do that, it would put it beyond reasonable doubt that Ange's team is better. I would say Ange's team is better without a doubt if they were to go and do a T. But I mean, time will tell. We've got a big game Sunday, and you don't want to get too far ahead of yourselves.
Yeah.
I done it earlier in the season. I brought up, when I was hosting, I brought up a wee thing about us going unbeaten in the league, and 2 weeks later or the next game we lost to St Mirren. So I'm not going down that road again.
Absolutely not. We are standing back for that precipice, shall we say? But listen, it's a great debate that we're very spoiled in the fact that we're able to have it. And for anyone that's listening in that maybe are more on Brendan's side still than Ange, that's absolutely not a hate on Brendan's side. You know, they were a magnificent side and they created unbelievable amounts of history and broke unbelievable amounts of records as well. So you know, that team are well and truly in the history books in the Hall of Fame at Celtic. But sort of back to
our host.
No, he's
we're back on.
Aye. It froze on. It froze here.
Aye, that's the joys of technology. It's sort of getting back to the sort of match from Saturday, Franny, and there's one, as I say, great performance by the whole team, but there was one player that stood out head and shoulders yet again, and it's a man from Japan, Mr. Reo Hatate. Just two fantastic goals, but that's just one, you know, that's just the tip of the iceberg in his overall performance. He was absolutely outstanding yet again. It seems to be, for me anyway, at this moment in time, he's an absolute shoe-in for Player of the Year.
I think if he continues this form, there can only be one winner for that award. And I mean, Greg Taylor could probably, if he continues his form, could consider himself really unlucky for that, because he had a good season, a really good season last season. And if he continues the way he is, he'll have had a great season this season. And has he got it to then go another level? But Hatate's, like, having Callum McGregor are absolutely pivotal to how we want to play there now. And McGregor kind of just showed that he has got great strike to open up the scoring and stuff, just to an advantage of sort of for the break. It wasn't really a break of ball, it was just the ball kind of got half cleared and he just caught it nice. But Hatate as well, it's just sometimes when he can be, sometimes Hatate, I think, it's probably down to the fact that he has only like been a professional for like 3-4 seasons, I think. He's not really been playing pro football for that long. But sometimes I think it can look not terrible, but look poor. It's easy for him to have a bad game because it does the wee drop of the shoulder. Ross loves it, and there's times when he does it a lot and it's never on, and he loses the ball. I can't remember the last game, but I can remember me and Ross watching a game and he dropped the shoulder so many times, and somebody kept on nicking the ball off him and that. But when it does come off, it's absolutely brilliant. He's got a great knack. He absolutely doing a defender without actually touching the ball. And it showed for his first goal. He just a couple of drops of the shoulder, wee shim, and then he just takes a wee touch to the side and pops it in the bottom corner. And then his second one, he kind of went into like a 50-50. Maybe was it with two Aberdeen boys, it's maybe not much a 50-50, but he wins it well. We drag back, then Megs the guy and just plays it on, and instead of just admiring what he's just done, found his way towards the box to maybe pick up in any scraps and again the ball kind of just breaks to him and it crosses it in. But the guy is coming in, like, I think for the last sort of 5-6 weeks, Celtic's kind of just been building, not necessarily playing through games, but doing enough. I think yesterday, even the St Mirren game, we were 1-5-1. I don't think we'll relentless for the 90 minutes. It didn't feel like a 5-1 game, whereas Saturday there, it felt like it should have been a lot more than 4-0. We just kept on going and going. It was almost like the players were like, right, we know we've got a big game coming up. So everybody just was on it, and Hatate, I know sometimes form goes out the window at these games, but when you look at our team, you've got to be confident going into Sunday and stuff. And the way Hatate couldn't be playing any better going into this game on Sunday.
He's, I think, to put it mildly, Ross, he's certainly staked a claim for a cup final starting place. Your own thoughts on our man from Japan, and have you got any more lyrical to wax about him?
Oh, I mean, Franny's covered a lot of it there. He's absolutely outstanding. I mean, Willie's like a super fan. I absolutely love Hatate. I do. Willie just he just absolutely adores him. But I mean, I totally get why. He's just on the move all the time. His work rate is just what you need right in the heart of your midfield. He's box to box. He's the biggest compliment I can pay him is he's as close to Stan Petrov that we've had since he was at the club. I think he brings everything that Petrov brought to the game. He gets up and down the park. He's good in the tackle. He sees a pass. He's got a great touch. He scores goals, as he's shown. I think he's up to about maybe 7 or 8, 9 for the season now, which is no bad. You'd be expecting him to get into double figures, but I think himself and the team are doing what Ange is looking for, and that is they're getting better and better all the time. And at this stage of the season, he wants them to be like at their utmost best, and it's getting hell. He's wanting them to be at their top level at the back end of the season, and I think it's starting to really come together for Celtic. I mean, obviously, like Franny touched on the St Mirren game there, it wasn't a 5-1 game. It wasn't. They didn't play as well as what they played on Saturday, but every single game is just the same. They control the game from start to finish. The opposing team is hardly got a chance. They're feared to come out. They try and come out, and Celtic's work rate is so good that I don't even think. I think Celtic make the teams they're playing, certainly in Scotland, they make them look worse than what they actually are, because their work rate is so good. And you look at CCV and Starfelt, right? You look at their record as a partnership, and it is amazing. But I don't think they have as good a record if Celtic don't play the way they do it as a unit in terms of Haksabanovic epitomised it, like I said. In terms of their work rate, as soon as they lose the ball to get it back, it's absolutely phenomenal. And more often than not, they're winning the ball back in the opposition's half. The opposition can't get out. We just absolutely suffocate them. And it's just every single player that Ange has signed, Hatate, Maeda, all these guys, they all are built on, first and foremost, that work rate, that non-stop on the pitch. You got guys, obviously Aaron Moy, he's maybe doesn't work. He probably does work as hard as the other guys. It maybe just doesn't look like it because of his style. But the whole team is just, it's not like they're all running about like heedless chickens. They all press at the one time. They all know when to go. They all know when to stay. More often than not, they get that right. And when they do, teams, like I say, they just cannot get out. And it's I'll say it again, I absolutely love watching this team. I love watching Hatate. I love watching Maeda. I love watching Jota. We are so blessed right now to have the players. And by the way, maybe 2 years' time, like these guys, 2 or 3 years' time, like these guys will not be here. But right now they are, and what a team we're witnessing. Honestly, it's fantastic.
Couldn't agree more, mate. And it's here's just hoping this rich vein of form continues for all of them. And I'm coming straight back to you, Ross, because one of the other players who featured on Saturday's first start for the club was O up front. He was Kyogo was deemed match fit by Ange on the Friday night, but like we kind of predicted, he was kept on the bench to start with, and O made his first start. Didn't get on the score sheet this time, but for me, he looked very impressive again. He's, we used to say Giakoumakis was something completely different to Kyogo. I think O is something completely different to Giakoumakis, and that I mean that in a good way as well. I think he has that physicality. I think he's maybe a bit more technically gifted, but he definitely, for me anyway, looks a bit of a live one.
Absolutely. I thought without obviously getting his goal, I thought he did a really good game. He was very effective in terms of he was picking the ball up, he's back to goal, holding the ball in, linking up the play really well. It sticks. It sticks when he gets it. When it comes into feet, it sticks, and that's what you want. You see him, he makes good runs. Even he was unlucky. I think it was the first half. I think it was maybe Jota played one right across, and he made a really good run. He was a whisker away for getting his toe on it. If he gets his toe on it, it just caps off a really good performance. He's not going to, obviously, I'm stating the obvious, but he's not going to come in and be the first choice right now. But like you say, he's a different option for Kyogo, which you want, and he brings some of the same qualities that Giakoumakis did. I think given time, he'll start scoring a lot more goals. He's not going to, I don't think he's, at the moment anyway, certainly not as prolific a finisher as Giakoumakis. I wouldn't sit here and say that he's a better player than Giakoumakis right now. Absolutely no way. But certainly, in terms, you look at Giakoumakis and how much we loved him. I don't think as good a player as he is, I don't think the Celtic team is missing him right now. And that's the biggest compliment you could possibly pay to O and the Celtic team, that you take a guy of that quality out, and I know he wasn't playing every week, but he was coming on and he was getting his goal and stuff like that. But you're no watching a game and going, "Oh, this game's screaming out for Giakoumakis. We could have been doing with him coming on." Not once have I felt that. And it's no slant the guy. I thought he'd done amazing, but I'm not like pining for him or missing him like I expected I would be.
Well, you're absolutely bang on. I mean, we spoke about that on the transfer deadline show about, it was stronger or weaker coming out the back end of the window. And I think exact same for O. I think you can give the exact same praise, I think, to Alistair Johnson as well. The fact that, a World Cup bronze medalist, we're not missing Juranovic really at right back either. Johnson looks like he's been playing there for years. What about yourself, Franny? Your own thoughts on our new striker? Do you think there's even perhaps an outside chance he could start on Sunday, or do you think natural order will resume and Kyogo will be leading the line?
I think Kyogo will be leading the line on Sunday. I think the fact that he got a good run out as well was kind of highlighting that. It was just making sure he kept the legs fresh and stuff. And not to totally criticise O, I would be more. I'd be more at ease with Kyogo up front than O right now. Just on what I've seen of O, I thought he's been good enough. Like as I've said, it's hard to say he's kind of covering for Gigi and you're not going to miss him. He's just in the door. It's not fair in the guy, to be fair to say that. But what I have seen, I think he is going to be a good player. Potentially have a better impact, maybe not necessarily goals wise, but for the team than what Giakoumakis did, in the sense that you can see, I think he is technically better on the ball than what Giakoumakis was, but Giakoumakis' first touch generally was a goal, so it didn't really matter how technical the guy was, in all fairness to him. But so he did link up the play well. You see, he never seemed to hide for the game. He always seemed to like to be touched tight a lot, which I don't know if he likes that wee roll, like take it in and roll the defender like he done with Considine and stuff. His link up play was good. He's quite pacing, and maybe that's what Ange wanted in Giakoumakis. I'm not going to sit and say Giakoumakis didn't close down, but he did. But maybe there's only, especially at Giakoumakis' age, you can't really make guys. You can make them faster in their mind, and they'll maybe know where to be. Like John Terry was never the fastest, but you never really seen him got beat for pace and things like that. Whereas I think now with a striker, it's maybe a wee bit different to do the press. You maybe need a wee bit of pace, and maybe that's what O's going to get. Because right now, I don't see much more. Apart, as I say, I don't know how clinical he's got to be, but he's got the physicality. He's got a better touch, I think, and things like that than Giakoumakis. But maybe just fits the team better with that press. But I think he can be happy with how he's performed since he came in. I think the fans are content right now with him, and it's just fortunate that Kyogo's absolutely flying now as well. So there's not a desperate. I suppose there is a desperate need in a sense for him to really hit the ground running. You always, just in case he's called upon, but it's similar, like I said weeks ago, like your Awatas and things like that. It's in Kobayashi, there's not a desperate need for the guys to really hit the ground running like we needed Maeda, Hatate, O'Reilly, and things like that last season.
I think that.
Sorry, Ross, on you go.
Obviously, we don't want to go too much into Sunday because it'll take away from the guys on Friday. But I think, like, say, if like Kyogo's going to start, absolutely no doubt about it. But if for some reason he couldn't start, I'll be quite comfortable with O starting on what I've seen him, and I think that's probably the biggest compliment you could give him. I would be quite happy. But obviously, I would be upset that Kyogo wasn't starting. But in terms of what I've seen when Giakoumakis started, you don't like to compare the two of them. It's no fair on O, but you can't help but do it. But Giakoumakis, he was more physical, and I think Celtic got more joy against Rangers with him up top than Kyogo. So I'm not saying it would work out exactly like that, but again, O is that more physical presence. He would maybe occupy, like say, Goldson a bit more. So obviously you want Kyogo to start, but again, I would be absolutely comfortable if O had to start.
I totally agree with you, mate. I think, as I say, I think we're all 99.9% that Kyogo will start. But whether if O was to play, I certainly wouldn't be frightened at all. I think he looks a real find, and I think he's going to do just fine in this Celtic side. And his contribution certainly earned him a standing ovation when he was replaced during the game. But for Kyogo coming on, and with that seamless transition, Ross, standing is something that potentially a certain section of the stadium could be doing a lot more if a lot of supporters or some of the supporters groups get their way. For anyone that's not seen it, there is a sort of group of supporters that started a campaign to have the old traditional Celtic End. When it was the old stadium, anyone that knows the West Stand, which is now the Jock Stein Stand, was the traditional Celtic End of Parkhead. On Derby Day, the East Stand, which is the Lisbon Lions Stand, was traditionally where the Rangers support used to congregate. These supporters have sort of proposed to extend the standing section, or certainly even move it from the northeast curve to behind the Jock Stein Stand. I would say initially the lower section, but initially the full stand was to be completely rail seated. The sort of the promotional video says it's kind of to try and replicate Dortmund's yellow wall or Liverpool's Kop for the big European nights. Of course, it'd be a massive logistical operation if nothing else. But what's your sort of initial sort of thoughts on it, and is it something you could ever see coming to fruition?
Well, first of all, in terms of if they wanted to make it like the yellow wall, stuff like that at the what do you call it, Dortmund, I think it would be certainly visually and in terms of the atmosphere, it would be quite good. But like you say, logistically, it's there's a lot of variables to consider for the club to consider, campaign or not. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I'm no a fanboy or an advocate of that fan base by any stretch, but they sort of look at themselves. They're no into elitism and stuff like that, and this is the irony in this proposal of that is quite startling, to be frank. You look at it, if they're going to move over to there, right? They're looking at that, and there's people that have sat in these seats in that stand for 25 years plus, right? Families, mums, dads before that, kids, all sitting in these seats, and they're just saying that you guys are no as important as us because we bring an atmosphere, right? So they want to, it's like, sort of an example would be like this group of fans that want to move into there, right? Now, it's hypothetical. I know they don't, right? But if they all lived in the same street, right, and they'd lived in each of their houses all their life, their dads lived in that house, their dad's dad, all lived in that house, and the house got handed through them, right? And then, I don't know, a big corporate company like Tesco, just for talking's sake, said to these guys, right, we're going to buy yous out, yous are moving out the house, and we're going to take over this and build a big, massive Tesco. They'd be like, no, this is our house, we're not moving out. Like, how dare you? Who do you think you are? You're bigger than us because you've got money. I'm not saying they've got money, but I think it's similar to that in the sense that they're basically saying, we'll just move into there, and everybody that's sat there all their life, some folk, will need to move to another bit of the stadium because we are better and we bring an atmosphere. It's wrong for me, and it's total disregard to your average fan. And by the way, they're average fans as well for me. They think that they're better, but they're no happy with all the access and stuff they get to the club now. For me, Celtic fans brought an atmosphere before them, and if they weren't there, they would bring an atmosphere again. But it's at the stage now where other fans can't start songs. It's got to be them. I just think, again, I'll say it in the thing with fairness, it would be visually really good, and it probably would add to the atmosphere. Certainly in European nights, it would be great. It would look really good, but you can't just disregard people who have sat in that stand all their days. It's just wrong.
Yeah, I can't really argue with any of that, to be honest. Ranny, that's the thing. I mean, don't, like, you know, I go to the games every week. There's no doubt. I mean, I used to sit in 111 when the stadium was first, rebuilt. That's where mine and my dad's seats always were up until 2016 when the real seating was introduced, and my dad was just, he wasn't really for it. My dad's not a big fan of standing at games the best of times, and he says, he didn't mind the sort of madness, as it were, on, derbies or whatever, but, he says, when it's a Wednesday night against St Johnstone, there's only so many times you can listen to Broad Black Brimmer being sung by 15-year-olds, and he was like, sometimes you kind of just want to sit and watch the game. Do you know what I mean? So we moved, and it's, we've got absolutely amazing seats now, and there's no denying what Ross was saying. The North Curve, as it's called, certainly does bring atmosphere. There's the sort of splint-off group over our side of the ground now in the southwest that call themselves the Bhoys. And there's been a rise of this sort of culture. It's more famous, I would say, in Italian football. I just think it's just, for me, as Ross says, visually it can be impressive, and I don't have any issues necessarily with certain songs or that being sung, but then again, are some songs that you just think these guys need to cut that out. I mean, Roman and the Gloaming especially, and some of the add-ons on that need to go. If people that sing that song think there'd be a better world without Protestants, I certainly think they should maybe read up on Celtic's history. But for me, and we've seen it again, I don't know if I said this to you guys on Saturday, but there was a lot of hold-up, more than usual, getting into the ground because the police had to escort these boys, as they call themselves, who were all dressed up in black hoodies with the scarves right across, thinking that they were, the latest batch of Antifa or whatever they call themselves. And I just think that they look, I think to an outsider would look quite visually intimidating. I think it's something that Celtic as a club never needs. And I've heard a lot of the arguments the other way going, they're just doing, this is just the culture now, this is what all supporters groups do. I've always thought that we prided ourselves on doing things a bit different, and I would argue a bit better. Celtic, you look at, there's no Green Brigade or Boys or Ultras in that Seville, any of the panoramic views of the Seville crowd and places like that. We've always kind of had a sort of different sort of vibe. I would say quite a more socially welcoming kind of vibe, a more liberal outlook. I just think, like Ross says, seems a very much a case of this is what we want to do, and to hell with the rest.
I mean, I like the idea. I think it would be, but it'd be kind of getting sold on creating our own yellow wall thinking. Mm-hmm. Get a bunch of folks standing, and we'll hear what Borussia Dortmund have got. I don't know how long it takes Borussia Dortmund to kind of get that sort of atmosphere at that stand. Get how long it takes logistically to even get the stand in that position. But as I say, I like the idea behind it. I would love to see it, but it's not as simple as, for me, it's not as simple as just saying, putting out a wee petition, or everybody wants it, right? But who's paying for it then? Because as much as the Green Brigade maybe saying, like Celtic fan base want it, is the Celtic fan base then going to say, right, well, we'll pay all the outgoings needed to do that, because it's not Celtic bringing this proposal forward. So financially, you've got to think about it. I suppose you would then recoup that maybe back in season tickets. I think the standing area, the way it obviously would work is it maybe increases the capacity a wee bit, so you might start recouping that money a wee bit quicker with the season tickets. And I don't know if the season tickets are might be a wee bit more expensive in that area. They might just try doing something like that. But I do like the idea of it. Like I love standing at the football, but you can't just think about yourself at football. If you start standing, the next person starts standing, the next person. There could be guys that couldn't stand. And there used to be an old boy that sat next to me and Ross, and there was no way he could have stood for the full 90. Absolutely no chance. So, and to then, not that it would have affected me and Ross at that time, because it's at the other end of the stadium, but it's not fair, like you were saying, it's not fair guys that have had their season ticket for countless years to then say, look, well, we now want to move you. Guys maybe find a certain way to get into there. They've made friends around that area, and it might put them off renewing a season ticket if they're getting moved to the absolute opposite end of the stadium. They might not know anybody around about them. Now, if they can maybe Celtic can say, oh, well, we'll guarantee the folk round about you will be round about you, it might make that transition a wee bit easier for the guys. But I don't think you can guarantee that, because there'll be season tickets in that part of the stadium. It's not going to be as easy as just to up 5 guys and say, right, well, there's 5 seats together. What's the knock-on effect of that, and then moving guys from that seat to there? You're not going to be able to probably get your pick, because there could be families of 4, 5, 6 folk that have all managed to get season tickets all together. And I hear what, like, I know it's not their seat, Monty, but you're paying for it season on season. It's folk refer to it as their seat. I get that.
You're buying it. It's your seat.
Like,
I think that was. Aye, sorry for anyone.
I get you're essentially renting it for a season, but you renew that rent year on year on. Folk that rent a house claim it as their own house at the end of the day. I think Monty's getting caught up in the word in there and just taking it a wee bit out of context. I don't think anybody thinks that own that seating parking has got to take it away with them. I do like the idea about it, but I think if it did go ahead and guys are getting moved, I don't really think that's fair that folks should get moved for somewhere they've sat for, could be 20 odd year. And I say made friends out that don't want to go into the whole mental health thing, but guys maybe didn't want to go to football for their mental health, and then if they then get moved, that might put them backwards a wee bit and be like, I don't know who's round about me and stuff like that. So it has got to be one that's got to split the fan base. But for me, I would love to see it, but I didn't ever see it happening. I think we're maybe getting a wee bit lost in the yellow wall at Borussia Dortmund and just hoping that we somehow recreate that.
I think even as well, we'll kind of tell it, but I think even the cultures are different in German football to Scottish football. I know that they're maybe saying, "Oh, this is what we're trying to change it so it's more like the German model, Ross." But you even think I couldn't even imagine a health and safety certificate being given to Celtic to have a standing section, especially in the top tier. I can just about imagine it happening in the lower tier if you were to, have the full sort of region behind the goal. But I can't see a safe standing section being granted for an upper tier, a stadium in Scotland.
I'd be very surprised. Listen, the long and short is, visually, it would look good, but this is no something that Celtic are proposing.
Very true.
This is no something that Celtic are proposing.
It's no velvet, I'm not wearing it, Stephen.
This is a group of fans who believe that the atmosphere they bring is so good that they deserve to go to wherever they want in the stadium. They've got a section now. It's standing. They're now proposing that Celtic, the club, pay to rejig the stadium again to accommodate them, and at the same time, whoever's in the area they want to move into, move, because we bring the atmosphere. We are the best fans. It's fucking absolute bullshit. It's total arrogance and disregard for any other fan, and it's pish. It's a pish idea. And it's not
I love how you kind of went to mean it'll be visually good to.
Aye.
Idea.
No, listen, it's so annoying though. It's like, I don't know how you can be that far up your own arse that you don't actually care about other folk. You just sign this petition so that we can do that because we are brilliant. That's basically what it is. In simple terms.
That's it. I mean, we've survived this long without one, is my opinion. And I think the corner, which isn't always full, may I add, the people that want to stand and sing have got more than ample space for me to do it. And when the time is needed, or the support, the rest of the support are more than capable of joining in. And
by the way,
it's not
Anthony,
something that would affect me, but I sit in I'm in the main stand, so it's not something that would directly affect me, but I just don't see a place for it at the moment. Sorry, Ross, I'll let you finish before we...
No, I was just going to say, and by the way, they're going on about, like, this will make the atmosphere... We've got one of the best atmospheres in Europe, the way the stadium is now. And, by the way, they bring a great atmosphere in that corner throughout the match. But on a European night, when that full stadium's rocking, nobody needs them right behind the goals. It works where they are. It's fine. They're tucked away in a corner. Would Ross give them any more standing seats, or is it a no-go? I don't know. I don't see how you can give them any more standing seats, because who's going to move, or who has to? Does somebody have to give up their seat, their ticket, to give them more standing seats? I just don't see how it works. I'm not saying I wouldn't give them it, but I don't see how it works in terms of sort of fairness for all fans, and because no fan is better than another. No fan is better than the other. No fan is more important than the other fan. We're all the same. We pride ourselves on that as a club. Everybody's welcome, and we're all the same. We're all unequal. So it's, for me, it won't get off the ground, and it shouldn't get off the ground.
Well, I'm going to say we're going to round up the last time, but I will just give a wee final point in that, Ross, because I can actually talk for the Voice experience. Like I say, I used to sit in 1-1-1 before it became the real seating. And as I say, I think the big difference back then was in 2016, it was Celtic themselves that proposed it. So what happened was it came in our renewal forum, basically that, and again, we were maybe fortunate in the at that point where, Ronnie was still the manager. The waiting list had completely more or less depleted. The top deck of the East Stand wasn't really being used for many games at that point. So there was the space, and it was basically in our renewal forum. Would you consider a move, or do you want to stay and be part of the real seating? My dad selected, we want to move, and the options of the two seats together in the main stand came up, and we took them. And because of the fact that Celtic, in their eyes, and it was actually a really good thing that they did, they were seen, essentially they were inconveniencing us because they were moving us, albeit to actually better seats. They gave us our seats where we sit now in the main stand at 1-1-1 prices for the first 2 years, which was really good. So I got to see aforementioned Brendan Rodgers' Invincible side up close and personal, even more than I would have for no a penny more. So that's the difference, I think. The fact that Celtic proposed the initial one, because they've seen that having some sort of standing section would have been a benefit. But I think when supporters groups, splinter groups start proposing these ideas, I think once you scratch the surface off it, it's not well as put together as they maybe like to think it is. But I'm sure it's something that will continue as the season goes on. But as I say, in terms of action on the park, boys, there'll certainly be plenty of folks standing at Hampden on Sunday with the fact that you can barely see the pitch from behind the goals. But it's obviously the League Cup final, Celtic v Rangers on Sunday. But for the first time in a long time, Franny, in fact, long I can remember really, the League Cup final has been played both in Scotland and in England on the same day, and it's a tournament. I accept this is more a thing about the tournament down south than up here, but you still do hear it, and no one's going to argue that it's not the third trophy in terms of prestige. Scottish Cup's got all the history and prestige. Your league championships, obviously, your bread and butter. The League Cup is essentially just a cup, but we have heard it being sort of derogatorily spoke of, like the Mickey Mouse Cup, or the cup no one's interested in, that kind of thing, from north of the border as well. Obviously, the tournament had a bit of a revamp in Scotland a few years ago when BT bought the rights to it, and they had the group stages in the early phases and things like that, and moved it back to its more traditional setting. Before Christmas used to be that has been the final sort of the last few years, back to its kind of early springtime season, part time in the season this year because of the World Cup, which is why it's fallen in line with the English calendar as well. But down south as well, there's a lot of chat about scrapping it all together, and they're saying that we're playing far too many fixtures, and something needs to give. I don't know about yous. I like the League Cup. I like it in both Scotland and England, to be fair. And as I say, provided that you don't give it too much, elevate it to a status that it's not worthy of, I fail to see why this clamour happens, to be honest, to scrap tournaments that are big business for the Scottish Football League and the English Football League that run the two competitions. Just yourself, Franny, what's your own thoughts on what they're trying to do, and do you have much of a love for the tournament itself?
I think it's one of the competitions. If you win it, you big it up. If you didn't care about it, it's kind of got that wee feel about it. I think one of the big things with it is there's no reward after winning it, so to speak. Like, you don't go into Europe out it. That maybe kills it a wee bit, in the sense that it's just one of them. It feels maybe it's just a competition just for the sake of just to bring maybe more money into the league and stuff, and it's one of the ones. But I think certainly in the UK anyway, traditionally it has been about for many years now. I think it was kind of started more for the sort of the lower league teams to give them a chance to get to the national stadium and things like that. And obviously, as time goes on, certainly down in England, I think that's how it first was designed. I don't think the EPL teams could actually compete in it. And at the time, then obviously, the more money that gets involved in it and stuff, that obviously brings the bigger boys to the table. They want a piece of that and things. So, we are traditionalists. I wouldn't like to see it go. I think one of the big problems with it, as says, there's no carrot at the end of it, there's no pot to go at the end of it apart from the trophy, which every professional footballer should be happy with. That's what they should be playing football for, to win trophies. But we know it's a lot of that's changed for that. They're all in it for the money. But I think what doesn't help as well is you get like journalists, guys in the media, they'll sit and criticise, saying, "Oh, the glamour is away from it, this and that." But at the same time, they're sitting saying, "That's just the League Cup. Teams will only play their reserves and things like that. Managers, like guys like Klopp, Pep, Conte, they'll play their youth players and stuff and say, "Oh, I've got too many games in that." But well, you're at a big team. This is what happens when you manage these big teams. You'll play in a lot of games, and it's just what I just manage a team that's not successful. Then you don't need to worry about that. But I think the media and things like that haven't helped throughout the years. The way they've sort of the narrative they've spun is about it's not a big competition. I would hate to see it go, Anthony, because there's no way it would go and not be replaced with anything. Something would get to be some other tournament, whether that be like a cross-border League Cup, like between the British and English teams. Something would get harmed because we see it now. It's like with the talk of the Super League coming back up, the Champions League's been refurbished, even the Club World Cup. I think FIFA are trying to get that to about 30 or 40 teams and stuff. There's no way they're going to kill off a competition and then they'll not be playing games for it. Something will replace it. So I don't see the point in if it ever came out getting rid of it if you're just going to play a bit. Probably evidently play more games because I think you only play maybe 6 or 7 to get to the fight. Like if you actually had to win it, taking out any potential replays and stuff like that. But so I think if you did get rid of some other competition coming in, no doubt you'd be playing maybe 12 or 13 games and things like that. So I just keep it as it is. But it is one of the ones, as I said right at the start, I love it if we win it, but I'm no arsed about it if you didn't win it.
By the way, Fran, you're bang on in terms of the fact that another competition would inevitably arise from it, which would no doubt be again skewed in favour of the bigger clubs as well, and they would inevitably have more chance of winning it as well. Ross, one of the things that I was kind of just thinking of there is, as I say, it's not the most glamorous trophy either side of the border, but it's quite strange that on the day where both cups are being played for, obviously up here you've got Celtic and Rangers, whatever anyone says, it's the biggest show in town. Two teams competing for a piece of silverware. That's without question going to garner the biggest audience in Scotland. And down south, it's going to be contested for by rejuvenated Manchester United, certainly that seem to be making the right sort of progress under Ten Hag. And of course, Newcastle, who haven't won anything since the 50s, and try telling the Geordies that this tournament doesn't matter on Sunday, and I think that you would say they've got another thing coming. Do you think potentially the 4 teams that are competing in each game, it could inevitably and hopefully give it the shot in the arm that it needs to perhaps keep it going rather than it potentially folding and some other Super League sort of thing coming in its place?
I think in terms of the one in Scotland, I think for me it's the biggest game, like you say, it's the biggest game that you could possibly have in the final. It's great for it. The one in England, to too well that I absolutely despise Manchester United and I despise Newcastle. So I won't be given one hoot about that game. So that it wouldn't give it the shot in the arm for me personally, but it might in terms of a whole. But I don't. I like Franny. I wouldn't get rid of the tournament. For one, well, Franny says there, if you win it, it's great. If you don't win it, you're no arsed, right? But you take that tournament away, you're no winning trebles. Like if you win that as part of a treble, it's outstanding. You've won all 3 trophies. If we start, it's just going to be a double, and you never win a treble again domestically. That's garbage. Winning the League Cup guaranteed. Well, that's what I was going to come on to. You'd said there's sort of no prestige in it. You don't get in and out of it. Well, instead of talking about scrapping it, why don't we give it prestige? Give the teams to get something out of it as well as the trophy. So they've brought back the Conference League. So it's essentially the Cup Winners' Cup. So if you win the League Cup, your domestic League Cup, you should go into that tournament. And wherever it is now, whatever position in the league it is that you qualify for it, just don't give it that. Just give it to the League Cup, because, like, I mean, don't be wrong, you're not going to see fucking like years ago, like maybe Falkirk getting to the final. I'd be very surprised. Aye, it's amazing. It's a showpiece game. It's a final, and there's silverware at the end of it. It's brilliant. If you go out and you don't win that League Cup, you're, as a Celtic fan, you're disappointed, bitterly disappointed, and even more disappointed if it's Rangers that win it instead of you. If you're going into, if that trophy's there to be won, if you don't win it, you're upset. But why not give it that prestige and allow, as I was saying, you're not going to, like you would have in the 90s, maybe see a Falkirk or a Raith Rovers. Mind, the Raith Rovers beat Celtic in it. You maybe not see that, but I mean, you could, and then you could have another fairy tale story like Raith Rovers going to play Bayern Munich. Maybe no Bayern Munich, because they wouldn't be in that, but you get the sentiments. It's an opportunity for a team that wouldn't normally, even if they were in the Premier League, they probably wouldn't get into that European spot. But if they have 5 or 6, whatever it may be, good games, and they end up winning that trophy, then they've got an opportunity in European football. It gives them a wee bit more money. I think it should go back to that. I'm old school. I like all this. I like straight knockouts, like the UEFA Cup used to be. I would love to see the Europa League being like that, but it's all money orientated, and it will never go back to that. But for me, the UEFA Cup was an absolutely... Actually, the Champions League, it was great, and it's still great in its own right, but I really liked the UEFA Cup, straight knockout, home and away tie, away goals. It was fantastic. For me, again, the League Cup, I don't understand why you would scrap it. Like Franny touched on it there, you hear like Jurgen Klopp talking about the amount of games and all that. That's like Franny says, that comes with the territory. If you're at a big club and you're winning games, you're going to have more games. It's just what happens. But I think it's total disrespect to the lesser teams, like saying, "Oh, we should get rid of that because we're playing too many games." Well, right, you're successful. You finish higher up in the league, so you get to play in Europe, and you've got an opportunity, a cup run, if you like. But albeit it's Europe. But teams like, I don't know, for talking's sake, a Fulham or something, they're not going to be in Europe. They don't live for the cups, because obviously they want to stay in the Premier League. But if you get some, well, there's Newcastle. They've not won nothing in years. If you take that cup away, and okay, they might get top 4 this year, but they might not. But they've got an opportunity to win that cup. And if they win that cup, it'll be party time in Newcastle. Do you know what I mean? It'll be they fans. They'll go off their heads. You take that cup away, and you take away days like that, moments like that for football fans, and that's why we all love football, for moments and days like that. So for me, it's not got like the prestige of other tournaments, but it's still a tournament that's got a lot of history. Certainly in our game, it's steeped in history. It's not as much as the Scottish Cup, but it's a tournament and a cup that's, for as long as I can remember, been played for, and it should be played for as long as I'm living and beyond.
As long as you're on here podcasting, that's the main thing, son. But I agree, boys. I think it's a tournament that should be here to stay, and hopefully, in terms of staying, the cup will be staying in paradise come Sunday night. But I'll leave all that for you guys to dissect on Friday night when you guys are back on live at 8 o'clock on Friday with the big Friday night cup final preview show. But in terms of tonight, I think that's us pretty much done. You enjoyed this one?
Really good, mate.
That's good. I must have missed the topics list when you said about the safe standing, but
did you know?
I didn't see that in the topics list.
I got a fair bit off my chest with that one.
Just a wee bit, Ross. Just a wee bit.
You always feel better once you've had an answer.
Oh, I'll sleep like a baby tonight, man.
Absolutely. Thanks again, guys. You've been absolutely brilliant as always. Thanks to everybody for joining in and getting involved in the comments. Franny doing great, keeping on top of them all and bringing them all up on screen. If you like what you've seen or heard, by all means, hit that like and subscribe button. And you know, that'll hopefully help the channel grow as well. And I'll not be on Friday night. I think it's you guys and Willie on Friday night, isn't it?
Sure. I
think so. But I'll be back on next Monday with the cup final review show. So here's hoping for a good result, boys. And thanks again. Stay well and keep safe. Hail, hail.